All right, so welcome to Faith Family, United Church of Christ. We're doing our Sunday school. Today we're starting a new series where we're looking at the book of Revelation, okay? And I got to throw this warning out there, okay? Everything that you've ever heard about the book of Revelation, set it aside, all right? Everything that you've been taught about Revelation, because most of us have been taught that it's a prophecy about today and we're living in the end of times. Set that aside, okay? First of all, it is the book of Revelation, singular. It's one revelation, okay? Some people call it, or some entitle it, the book of Revelation of John, okay? Because the person that wrote it says that his name is John, okay? But that isn't the truth. The revelation comes from the person that's showing John these things. So a better way of describing it should be a revelation of Jesus Christ, right? Because we see that Jesus is the one that comes and shows all of these things to John, the author of this book.
First sentence says a revealing of Jesus Christ the Messiah.
A revealing, that's revelation. Okay. So that's the first thing. Just kind of set everything aside because we're going to look at it as what it was intended, okay? Not as what people have made it into today. Okay, so with that, let us start with the author. The author. And I have to tell you, I was reading this commentary right here, and I got a little bit through the author, and I stopped. And I was like, wow, that's something completely different than what I've ever heard. And I wanted to study it a little bit further. So I Googled some things, I looked up some things, and I said, that's interesting. And then I took his note, his footnote, and it referenced this book. This is another commentary by another person. And she gives a really, really in-depth study into the book of Revelation in who is the author or authors of Revelation. How there's probably more than one author. And I was like, about that time, I walked in and I talked to Cindy and I said, we might have to postpone going through the book of Revelation for Sunday school because I want to study this a little bit more in depth. And then I got to thinking about it and I was praying about it and everything. And I was like, you know what, that's not going to affect how we do this study. So I'll do that study on kind of on the side, but I wanted to go ahead and start this and to get this out there. And there's a lot.
Is John the author?
The John is the person that is said to be the author. Okay. Now, just so you know, what she claims is that it was several, just like the Old Testament, they believe that it's several different authors of several different things, and they put them together as one. They combined them and made a coherent story out of it. And that's what she's saying happened. There was some prophecies from before John wrote this. I'm just going to use John as the author. Before he wrote his, and then there was other later what he is saying to be revealing. Okay, so that's like two different things and not necessarily in order. And one of the things that we'll see when we get into the book of Revelation, it kind of bounces around in time frame. Okay, so we've got what is prophecy. What they're saying is prophecy, but it's actually before what he's writing is happening. So kind of go back and you're talking about the prophecy of Jesus. Well, how are you talking about the prophecy of Jesus, and then you're talking about this, and then you go back to talking about the prophecy. So it kind of bounces around like that. Okay, so that's kind of confusing, and that's what she points to, the fact that there was prophecy in the time before, or right as Jesus, before he was born, as he was born, and then going into to the time when this was written. And those are written down. And then there's also the predictions of what's going to happen next. So the author was probably someone that was related to, had some acquaintance with Jesus at the beginning of Christianity. Now, some people will point out and say, oh, this is the same author that wrote the gospel. Okay.
Maybe.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because you just do the math. Okay, the math says that let's say that John was 15 when all the events of the gospel took place. That's very young, but let's say he was 15. He was a young man. And when he wrote this, how old would he have to have been?
95.
At least 75. Let's say 75. Because I'm sorry, we was talking beforehand. The date of the writing of Revelation, or the culmination of it, putting everything together and putting it in one form, was about between 95 and 100, 105. So in that time frame. So you're saying at 30 AD, okay, 30 AD, John, the disciple of Jesus, was about 15 years old. That puts him at 70 plus, 75 plus. Yeah. And what was the life expectancy of that time?
35, 40.
35. 40 was good. Wow, you get up to 40, you were really good. But people did live that long, but they were richer people that had substance and everything. Everything just was, they had no violence in their life. They had no, bad vices. Yeah, and so it was very rare for someone to live past 40 years old at that time.
Medical facilities.
And if you read the very beginning, it talks about how he is in Patmos. That's an island off of what's commonly, or is currently known as Turkey. But it's a little island, and that's a prison island, kind of. So he's in prison. And the tradition is that he was once boiled in oil as his death. So he's gone through a lot of turmoil and things. So people that go through a long period of that don't usually live that long, especially being tortured and those kind of things. So I don't believe that the gospel writer of John is the same writer here. Okay. Just like I don't believe that the writer of the epistles, the letters of John, I think those are three separate people that are just have the same name as John. Okay, so you got John, the person that wrote the Gospel of John. You got John the elder, which was an elder of a community who wrote the letters of John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. And then you've got this person writing the revelation, or a revelation of Jesus Christ. Okay, so those are the three things. Does it matter? Does it matter who the author is? Probably not. So let me explain to you.
It matters in one sense, because in the beginning it says, I, John, like it's a first hand, but then that voice leaves in a little bit. But in the very, very beginning, it says that these messages were packaged by Jesus and delivered through an angel, and he told them so it more, to me, sounds like it was a verbal telling and not maybe a written telling, so other people could have written it. It could have still been his revelation.
Yeah.
Or it could, not his revelation, but it could still have been revealed to him. But to me, it sounds more like an oral tradition.
Okay. That could be. That could be. And that's what I was going to say next. Just like I don't believe that there was one person named Mark who wrote the Gospel of Mark, one person named Luke that wrote the one Matthew. I don't believe that. I think it was a community of people that were sitting down and putting Jesus's gospel, the gospel of Jesus coming to earth, in their own words, if you can say that, because Mark and Matthew almost sound exactly alike. So it's probably, like Cindy was pointing out, a community got together and they were writing down. And this comes from a tradition that is John's tradition. Or maybe John was the one that told it to them. And so we get this tradition. And this is the thing. At this time, how important is it to drop names? It's very important. Even today, right? Today, if I say, oh yeah, well, I was talking to Jeff down at the corner, and you go, who the heck is Jeff? But if I say, oh, give me somebody famous. That's a good... What's that? Oh, okay. That's a good one. If I was saying, yeah, I was talking to Baker Mayfield down there and he was telling me about what the Bucks are going to do. Now you're like, oh, yeah. But if I say, hey, I was talking to Jeff and he's saying, yeah, the Bucks are going to, who's Jeff and why does he? So it's important for the early church to put these gospels in the voice of someone that everybody knew. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, And so it's not deceptive in the fact that it's coming out of their tradition. Does that make sense? So that was something that we can't think of today, but we actually have. I'll explain that in a second. Something that we don't think is right today, to write something and attribute it to somebody else that's famous, right?
It adds validity to the statement in the book.
Yeah.
Because if the person is believable, the name represents truth.
Yeah. And
so I love the idea that it's oral tradition, and it could be 3 oral traditions or whatever. Because that adds anonymity to the authors. And so the book becomes important without the author.
Yes.
It's the content of the revelation as it applies to us. That's the important thing in the book.
I agree. And I think that's why it was so important for the book of Acts to point the way to Paul. Because you got all these letters circulating about Paul, and everybody's going, well, who's Paul? Who's Paul? And then you get the book of Acts and you're going, oh, Paul is just like Peter and John from earlier. He's going to the Gentile. And you're like, oh. And so now you've given validity to Paul's writings, and now you go back and you read Paul's letters a little bit differently.
They have earned your trust.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the mindset that we're talking about here. And so by putting it into the words of John, I mean, they could have been John's, but not at this point. And it's just oral tradition. And now we're putting it down in written tradition. And this is what he taught us. So that's the author in not a nutshell, in a convoluted kind of understanding.
There's the author of the tradition, and then there's the compiler of the book.
Yeah, and we can look to art like this, because you go and you look at Rubens paintings. You ever been down to Sarasota and gone in there? And there's several Rubens paintings. They're beautiful. They're huge. They're like the whole wall, and they're just packed with people. Anyway, he didn't necessarily paint every one of those, because you become famous. You paint a couple, and you become famous. And then people want to study under you. And they come, and you teach them how you do it. And they paint stuff. They did it, but in your style. And it gets incorporated back into a Rubens, because it's Rubens, kind of an academy. It's Rubens Academy that put forth this. But you can, he teaches them how he does his brushstrokes, and how he does just the little things. And they may be working on something, and he comes in and he works on it too. But it's the tradition of Rubens, and that's the same with some of the books. That's the theory of some of the books in the New Testament. It's not necessarily them that's doing it. It's their school, what they've taught everybody. Does that make sense now? Okay.
It's true of all books of the Bible that are orally transmitted.
Yeah.
And written down.
Yeah.
It's not a new concept.
So we have the date is 95 to 105. We have the author, more or less written down from tradition. Now comes the hard part. What do we categorize the book of Revelation? It's not history. It's not poetry. It's not wisdom literature. It's not a gospel, which is New Testament history, or it's not a letter, but it is a letter. So there's this new genre of writing about the same time, between about 200 BC until I would say probably about 150 AD, in which they call it apocalyptic literature. And it fits into that, in that it's talking about an end of time coming. Because if you imagine this, we're going along on a timeline, right? And everything's going along, but things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And the apocalyptic timeline says God is going to intervene at this point in time and change everything. Okay? Sound familiar? Kind of like what happened in... Huh?
Look at all the shows
Yes, yeah.
and everything about the apocalypse.
So everything's going to go to south, and then God is going to intervene. And after God intervenes, God's going to set up His rule.
This is not necessarily a Christian concept.
No, it's not necessarily.
Apocalypse.
As a matter of fact, there's a lot of debate on whether it's actual Jewish ideas on the apocalyptic thing, or if they borrowed it from when they were in captivity, when they left captivity in Babylon, and they've got this apocalyptic ideas from them. Because if you look at the book of Daniel, which is supposedly written while they were in Babylon, it has a lot of the same characteristics of an apocalyptic. Okay. So we can say it's an apocalyptic, but it doesn't really fit the mold. It's like trying to put a rectangle into a square. It'll fit, but it doesn't fit, perfectly. Okay. So it's not fully an apocalyptic writing. What does it say? What did it say? What was the last one we talked about? We was talking about the end of the book. It said, if anybody adds to from this book of prophecy. So it's a book of prophecy, but it doesn't fully embrace the ins and outs of a prophecy. it just doesn't fit, just like it doesn't fit into the category of apocalyptic writing. So it's kind of its own apocalyptic prophecy. So it's kind of both. There's no other Bible book in the Bible that is like this. It's different in that way. It's part prophecy. It promotes itself as being a prophecy, but at the same time, it's apocalyptic in nature. Not fully apocalyptic writing, but apocalyptic. So it's a kind of an apocalyptic prophecy. Does that make sense? You following that? Yeah. Okay, so it's different than any other book in the Bible. Okay. I said something. Do you know what AD means? What's that mean, though? That's Latin.
After Christ.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean after Christ. What does Anno Dominic mean?
After the year, after God, after...
We used to say it all the time back in the day. What's that? This is the day of
The Lord.
This is the year of the Lord.
Anno Domini, okay, all right.
The year of the Lord.
I said that, God.
Yeah, the year of the Lord. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Now, a lot of scholars are kind of going away from that because we're trying to branch out and we're trying to incorporate other religions into us. So we're not going to say, oh, it's the year of our Lord. Well, what about them? That's kind of, and if you look at the Jewish calendar, they have their own months and they have their own years. And now the Muslims have their own count of what year this is. We say it's 2025, but they say it's different. And the Jewish people say it's a different year. And we all come together to, but I just thought that was interesting. One of the things that if you read books and things, you'll come across CE now instead of AD. Or you'll see BCE, before the Common Era. And then now we're living in the CE, Common Era. So if you see those, don't get confused. It's the same one. It's just using different language to be more inclusive. So don't fret it though. There was one more thing that I wanted to go over. So tell me this. As an apocalyptic prophecy, what is it prophesying about? This is a misnomer about most prophecies.
What do I think about it, or what do people think?
What do we think? What is the common understanding of it today?
They think it's the end days.
The end days. And because the end days haven't come yet, it's talking about today, right? All this stuff is talking about today.
For the future, yeah.
Yeah, you've seen all the books.
Talk about the end of life on earth.
Well, no, not necessarily because of the millennial, but at the end of this reign of Christ. What was that?
A dinosaur.
Oh, it's a gecko. Hello.
But it's talking about to us, to me, all right? It talks about the fact that we are going to die and that there is some form of resurrection.
I also think that it's talking about how heaven is not always a far off place where heaven should be on earth.
You're right, it's right here.
Yeah.
And it's right now.
See, here's something, and this is probably the way Christianity is developed over the years. Prophecy is what? Telling the future, right?
Not always.
No.
No.
It's also telling your past and what your mistakes you've made.
Exactly. Most prophets, if you go look at the prophets, they were going, and I like to say this, prophecy is going and telling truth, hard truth, to people that are in power. The prophets were always at odds with those in power, in political and
Also people who don't want to hear the truth.
yeah, and don't want to hear. But go ahead.
One of the hard things about Revelation is because, like all the other books of the Bible, which you can apply to your life today on earth, you have Revelation, which is very difficult to apply to today,
Because of the imagery.
or what we think it's trying to say to us, and we get sidetracked that it's a message to us.
But
We're human, we're here, and because of Christ, we have a promise.
and that's what I was looking for. Okay, I do not think that Revelation or any of the other prophecies are directed at us here today. Do you see what I'm saying? Now hold on, don't. They're not directly, whoever. Let's just say John. John didn't write down and foresee in 2025 this was going to happen. Okay? Prophecy is when they look around them and say, this is happening and it's wrong. If this continues, this will happen. Right? Let me give you an example. The book of Jonah. Jonah was told to go to Nineveh. Of course, he ran away, and God said, okay, we'll play your game. And then finally got him to go to Nineveh. What was his message? What was his prophecy? Repent or you will be destroyed. Right? That's a hard message to tell to a powerful nation like that. But he did it. And guess what? They repented. And was Nineveh destroyed? No, because the prophecy didn't come true, right? No, it did come true. Repent. If you don't, you will be destroyed. They repented. They weren't destroyed. Okay? So that's the idea behind prophecy. To a situation in the prophet's time and life. Now, we see people in the New Testament writing about things that happened in the Old Testament as if it was talking directly to them.
Yes.
Okay? So we think that we do the same thing, but that's not what they do. They go look at the situation that prophet was in, and they say, oh, that is just like our situation today. And that's how it relates to us today. We have to understand what the prophet was saying at his time, and then weigh it against our time and say, is that happening to us today? The same thing? And that's when it applies to us.
Always.
So, and that's the old adage, right? History repeats itself. And so it's kind of like every generation has pointed to the book of Revelation and said, oh, we're living in the end of time. This is happening and that's happening. And what they're pointing at is the similarities that the book of Revelation is showing to the people. Hey, this is happening. This is terrible stuff happening. And that now let me go back one more. You remember the apocalyptic writing? We're going downhill. God comes and changes everything. Okay? So that's the end of time that they're talking about. Boom, boom, right? And so there's this big uproar at the time of the writing of Revelation between 200 and we'll go with 200 AD, 200 BC, 200, yeah. So there's this time in there that people just thought the world was, it's got to end. It can't get any worse than this. And so they had all this apocalyptic writing, not only the book of Revelation, but there's a lot of other writings out there. And that's what we're waiting for. They're waiting for the end of time. And now we're 2,000 years later, and we're like, where to go? Even after the book of Revelation was written, right? Book of Revelation was compiled, put together, and then now we're in AD 150, 200, 250. Where's the end coming? When's the end coming? And so this idea of the end coming gets kind of pushed aside, and that's why we don't have as much apocalyptic writings after that. Go ahead, Bill.
why can't one look at Revelation as a message for our life here on earth? And our life will end.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and it was right there, and it's telling a story, and it's saying there's hope.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay?
I believe so.
So you don't have to have an end of time. These time's going on,
Mm-hmm.
which is man-made, but it's going on. But you're gone. What's going to happen to you? That's what I think it is.
Yeah, I think there's hope built into that. I do believe that. I believe that. But the idea of the end of time coming in their lifetime kind of came and went. Just like the other day. Was it last month, Cindy? When was the rapture supposed to happen? Was it in August? Was it August, September? Yeah, every year. And then the joke is, you know it's not going to happen because no one will know the time and the hour. So if you say that's when it's going to come, it's not going to come that time.
That also proves the point.
So, go ahead. Oh. So that's what we're looking at. We're going to look at the book of Revelation not as something that's affecting directly, predicting, Hitler came to power and this happened and that happened, but that it has similarities when the book was written.
What do we want
I
to
also,
read
I
for
also
next
think
week?
it's a warning to Christianity.
Yes.
Because in every generation there's an uprising of evil.
How many, we talked about this, we'll get into this. It says he's writing, in the beginning, he's writing to the 7 churches scattered through Asia, right? 7 churches. Of
The
those,
author had to write to somebody.
who are those 7 churches?
Laodicea.
Only know Laodicea other than this because of what?
Get Ephesus, and it's there.
Ephesus is the only one that is,
And it's still there.
that he wrote to in the book of
The
Revelation.
cities are there.
The cities are there, but the churches, they're gone. So that's interesting. That's interesting that happened. And that's my side study on this, with this book and this author. So
What do we want to read for next
just
week?
go through and read Revelation. Okay?
The whole book?
Yeah, the whole book.
Only 22 pages. Only 22
Oh, yeah.
chapters,
Can you listen?
said
Can you
read it
listen to
out
books? Can you listen to books?
Yeah.
Can you just?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So if you go on our website, our newsletter, I put the scripture readings for this week that we're going to use in our service. But if you click on those and up at the top, you can put Revelation or whatever you want, and it will have a little button, a little speaker looking button. You click on that button and it will read it to you, and you just listen to it. And that's what I do a lot of times. As I'm working, I'll
It
put
probably means more to me. He told me to read it
out loud. Yes, yeah, and
that probably is more important for me to do.
both are good.
yeah.
Both are good.
It's the idea of you're getting more than just you're hearing it as well. So
Yeah.
anyway, okay, so that's it. Next week we will go over Revelation. We'll go start with chapter 1, and I hope we can get through more than chapter 1. So read chapter 1 and 2, and then we'll just adjust as we go,
Okay.
because I get long-winded.
Okay.
You'll need a TV screen too.